Jason and Maggie, thank you for inviting us to the MCC. As the conference defends core moral principles and fundamental rights in the public arena, it recently produced an advocacy report on the 93rd legislative session. It can be read on your website, mncatholic.org, and includes more than 24 initiatives and their progress. Recently shared with me are 5 issues that have risen to a certain level of notice for the conference as the 94th legislative session begins. One is expanding a nation-leading child tax credit that the conference championed. The legislature passed in 2022, and that took effect for the 2023 tax year. The current tax credit is worth up to $1,750 per child, depending on income, with no cap on the number of dependent children who qualify. What might an expansion look like, and why is it important?
We're excited to share that a number of other states are taking this issue up. Our friends at the New York State Catholic Conference are supporting a proposal there. Other states are looking at expanding their child tax credit as well. And it really is rooted in the fundamental principle that budget and tax policy should be ordered toward making family life easier. And the reality is that the cost of everything is going up. So that nation-leading child tax credit really helps low and low middle income families. And there's no cap on that credit. That's really, really important. So there's no cap on the number of kids who qualify in a family for that credit. It really helps them afford gas, groceries, pay the bills, allow them to put a child on a sports team, do whatever they need to do with that money. And the fundamental principle of that is that we trust families to use that money effectively. So rather than having to go to a preferred vendor that the government chooses for you for child care or whatever, we're empowering families to make the decisions they need, putting more money back in their pocket to be able to afford families and do the work that they need to do to raise their children.
You're looking to expand it. What does that mean?
There's a number of ways we could look to expand the child tax credit. The cap right now, the phase out starts at about $35,000 income for a joint filer. Maybe we could raise that to $45,000. If you're starting that phase out at $45,000, we're going to be able to reach even more families in our state with that. So there's other different levers you can do in the tax code to expand that, but that's one we're looking at right now.
Your office has been instrumental in stopping the legalization of online sports gambling in Minnesota. Why is this effort important to Catholics and other people of goodwill? And what might happen in this legislative session?
We're hoping that work can continue in 2025 as legislators are considering legalization and joining other states who've already legalized sports betting in some form. What we're really concerned about is putting a sports book or a bookie basically in everyone's pocket through their cell phone. We're concerned about the ways in which it fosters family fragmentation, creates serious economic hardship for families, ensnares people with addiction, particularly our young people and our young men especially. We're very concerned about its impact on them, their ability to form their own families in the future because of financial hardship. We're seeing already so many troubling statistics as this experiment in other states plays out.
The conference has partnered with the Minnesota Family Council to stop creation of a legal framework for commercial surrogacy contracts, more or less the practice of women bearing children for other people to raise. Why might some advocate for commercial surrogacy?
Yeah, so commercial surrogacy has been a topic at the Capitol for a number of years. It heated up last year when it passed in the Minnesota House. What it really is the buying and selling of children. And that's what we're opposed to. You shouldn't put a price tag on what a child should cost, nor should you hire someone to carry a child and then strip them from that child when they're born. They've only known their mother or their carrier, the woman carrying them, for those 9 months. That's the only person they've known, and they're going to be stripped of them right away and sold to someone else who may or may not have the best interest of that child in mind. So we have a lot of concerns about this, concerns about putting the interests of adults above the interest of the best interest of those children.
At the end of the day, women are not for rent and children are not for sale. This is an issue that Catholics really need to be paying attention to. Issues around assisted reproduction have really gathered a lot of steam and public interest as of late. But people need to realize that these often involve in vitro fertilization and IVF cycles, eugenics in many forms. And at the end of the day, IVF and assisted reproduction often end up in resulting in killing more human embryos than abortion does. in a given year. So this is a very strong pro-life issue that we need to be concerned about.
Your office has pointed out that legislation to legalize physician-assisted suicide has been introduced every year in Minnesota for more than a decade. The conference has worked with the Minnesota Alliance for Ethical Healthcare to oppose the practice. What dangers would physician-assisted suicide pose to healthcare and the Catholic commitment to the dignity and sanctity of all human life?
We're called as Catholics to steward the gift of life. That's why we defend the right of access to healthcare, basic healthcare that's preventative and restorative. We have to be stewards of that gift. That's why the Catholic Church and its ministries have always been leaders in that field, and creating the first hospitals, for example. We have to steward the gift of life at the end of life, and there are right ways to do that, and there are wrong ways to do that. So how do we steward the gift of life, recognizing that we're not the author of our lives, that our lives are in fact a gift to be stewarded. We don't get to choose when we come into the world, and we don't get to choose when we go out. Now we can make reasonable decisions about care, and that's where we get into distinctions about accepting what's called ordinary care, proportionate care, and declining care that's disproportionate in terms of the benefits that it offers comparatively to the burden. So we can make choices. We can offer compassionate alternatives to assisted suicide at the end of life. We have things like palliative care. In fact, pain management is not one of the top reasons why people in states where physician-assisted suicide is illegal actually choose physician-assisted suicide. They're concerned that they're going to be a burden. They're going to be a burden to their families. They're going to lose their independence. Our solution is bringing better care at the end of life. It's not simply about rights or autonomy or anything else. It's about conscripting medical professionals into this decision to prematurely end your life. And we think that's wrong. We think it's going to be harmful. We think vulnerable populations are going to be affected by this decision. When care is expensive and killing is cheap, which do we think will ultimately prevail? It's something we all need to be concerned about, because protecting the so-called choices of a few is going to end up endangering the healthcare choices of everybody else.
You mentioned the cost. That is something that anyone faced with a long-term healthcare issue knows about. So is one of the solutions to fund better this end of care, palliative care, make that a priority, even in our funding, in our budgets?
Yes, absolutely. That's why the Alliance for Ethical Healthcare was supportive of the creation of the Palliative Care Committee within the Minnesota Department of Health to find better ways to fund palliative care, to provide training and access to palliative care. We need to be making sure that our long-term care personnel are properly funded, that we have a good business model in place for long-term care. Because if people don't feel like they have good access to long-term care, they're going to feel like their choices are constricted.
One proposal under the Families First Project is eliminating the state sales tax on necessary baby items such as cribs and car seats. And you've provided some terrific information. Any parent spending $200 on a car seat could save nearly $14 in the state sales tax. $200 on a crib, another $14. $150 on a baby swing would keep about $10 in that parent's pocket. How are lawmakers responding to this proposal?
2025 is another budget year. The legislators do have to pass a balanced budget. So we're hoping that this policy is again in the mix, because what it does is helps young families be able to either start their family or expand their family. And it may not seem like a lot of money, but it really does add up when you add up all the expenses that a family's going to face when they're looking at the startup costs for having children. They might save about $150 on sales tax. Well, they could use that to buy a safer car seat.
The Families First Project was really an invitation to the broader Catholic community to work in their communities and in their parishes to enact pieces of legislation. So we had on that original website, familiesfirstproject.com, the opportunity for parishes to identify particular pieces of legislation and then work in their communities and with their legislators to get those passed. We have a small staff here serving the bishops of Minnesota. We can't possibly enact all these bills. We maybe have 4 or 5 priorities every session that we're working on. So we really need the support of the people in the pew to jump on board around those policies. And one of the reasons we think that's should be a real thing that can bring parishes together.
And if people have questions about how to do that, or actually see something that they want to do, we're happy to help guide them or offer, those first few steps for them and be that resource. So if they see something, I love this policy, I want to talk to my legislator, reach out to us. We'll help make that connection.
What's the best way to reach out?
our website, mncatholic.org. But if you go to familiesfirstproject.com, our dedicated website, it has a how-to guide for parishes. So it's our job to give the folks in the pew the resources they need to be effective advocates. You don't have to be an expert. All you need to do is showing up. Most of this work in terms of democracy is about showing up, but so few people, Joe, are showing up. So we need people to show up. 5 phone calls to a legislator, a little meeting at McDonald's on a weekend on a Saturday morning with 10 people from the parish makes a huge impact, and we can't underscore that enough. All those calls, all those emails, they do make a difference, and people really need to just show up and do the work. Catholic Advocacy Network at our website, mncatholic.org, is an easy entry point to do that.
Prayer undergirds all that you guys do. It seems to me that it's grown, that urge to pray, and that place to pray now is even in our Capitol building. So it's the first Friday of each month.
Yeah, the first Friday of every month during session, January to May, we have adoration held in the governor's dining room at the Capitol from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m.
And people can just drive up, find a place to park, and go.
Yes, they can find a place to park, but if they register through our website, mncatholic.org, under the events tab, we'll send them a parking pass. They can park in our lot. This is our 3rd year doing it. We're so excited already after our first Friday in January, right after the Labor Day or the New Year Day holiday. Great crowd this year. Who understands the importance of praying for and interceding for our elected officials, interceding for our state, and just building the common good here. We need, especially in this crazy time at the Capitol where there's such partisan division and conflict right now, an almost evenly split legislature in both houses, where we need people to move beyond simple compromise into collaboration. Collaboration is where you do great things and get things done for the people of Minnesota. Compromise is often fine, but it's just often the status quo. If we move it from compromise to collaboration, that's where we start to see things happen. Hopefully our legislators will pick up that spirit of collaboration and move to work for the common good of all Minnesotans.